Mangwanani Malelepo Vukenjani Kwas Vanave Africa. Welcome to Africa Good Morning, the news and current affairs show bringing you everything you need to know happening in the SADC region and beyond. Today is Friday, the 10th of September, and as usual, you are joined by Aina Raiza Kweyo and Ashlyn Berry.
Today is also Swap Ideas Day. The exact origins of Swap Ideas Day are unknown. However, it is believed that the creator of this day is Robert Birch. This was not his only unusual idea, as he is also thought to have invented several other strange celebrations, including Lumpy Rug Day, Trivia Day, and a bizarrely named Nothing Day. And here is more on Swap Idea Day.
Yeah, we hot, man. Hip-hop kids are in the building. Hip-hop kids are in the building.
Step with me, it's easy as 1, 2, 3. Now make it rock side to side. That's how we do it, boy. That's right, that's right. Step with me, it's easy as 1, 2, 3. Now make it rock side to side. That's how we do it, boy. That's right.
Welcome back to Africa Good Morning, and here are the news-making headlines. Tigray forces killed 120 civilians in the Amhara village. Rebellious forces from the Tigray region killed 120 civilians over 2 days in a village in Ethiopia's Amhara region, local officials told Reuters on Wednesday. The Tigrayan forces later issued a statement rejecting what they called a fabricated allegation by the Amhara regional government and denying any involvement in the killing of civilians. It is the first such report of Tigrayan forces killing a large number of civilians since they seized the territory in Amhara. Tens of thousands of people have fled their homes in the region as the Tigrayan forces have advanced. Reuters was unable to independently verify the accounts. In their statement, Tigray forces called for an independent investigation into all atrocities in the region. Video interviews provided by Reuters by the Goda city government indicated that the villagers fought with the Tigrayan forces. An interview with the men in an old military uniform said the village had mobilized every able person to fight back against the Tigrayan forces when they heard they were approaching.
Now in our second story, West African regional bloc suspends Guinea after coup. West Africa's main political and economic bloc suspended Guinea's membership on Wednesday following a weekend military coup that ousted President Alpha Condé and dealt the latest in a flurry of setbacks to democracy in the region. During a virtual summit, leaders from the 15-member Economic Community of West African States, ECOWAS, demanded a return to the constitutional order and Condé's immediate release, and also agreed to send a high-level mission to Guinea as soon as Thursday, said Burkina Faso's Foreign Minister Alpha Berry. Guinea's coup leader Mamadi Doumbouya, a former French legionnaire, has pledged to install a unified transitional government, but has not said when or how it will happen. Guinea's main opposition leader, Salou Dalain Diallo, who finished runner-up to Condé in 3 successive elections, told Reuters on Tuesday he would be open to participating in a transition back to constitutional governance. Since the coup, the life in the streets of Conakry appears to have returned to normal, with some military checkpoints removed.
Morocco's Islamists suffer big loss in election. Morocco's Islamist Justice and Development Party has suffered a crushing defeat in a parliamentary election, slumping from the first 8th place. In a liberal National Rally of Independence, party gained the most seats, followed by another liberal party, the Authenticity and Modernity Party, which is seen as close to the monarchy. The RNI and the PMA parties took 97 and 82 seats respectively of the 395 seats parliament, while the center-right Istiqlal Party got 78 seats according to the preliminary results announced on Thursday. The PGD only got 12 seats from the 125 seats it had in the outgoing assembly. Elected politicians in Morocco have only limited power as key decision remains in the hand of King Mohammed II.
COVID-19, unacceptable deals and delays hampering life-saving COVAX deliveries. While 80% of citizens in high and upper middle income nations have had a dose of COVID-19 vaccine, that figure stands at just 20% for those living below the top tiers, according to a joint statement issued by UN and partner agencies responsible for the multilateral COVAX initiative to provide equal access for all. With widespread support, COVAX secured financing, dealt directly with vaccine developers and manufacturers worldwide, and addressed a host of operational challenges to organize the most complex vaccine rollout in human history. The key COVAX milestone of 2 billion doses released for delivery is now expected to be reached in the first quarter of 2022, says the statement. There is only one way to end the pandemic and prevent the emergence of new and stubborn variants, and that is by working together. Now is the time for true leadership, not empty promises, WHO Chief Tedros Adhanom Ghebreyesus said. WHO wants to support every country's efforts to vaccinate at least 10% of their populations by the end of this month, at least 40% by the end of this year, and 70% of the global population by the middle of next year.
South Africa puts off municipal election for 4 days after court bars long COVID delay. South Africa set November the 1st date on Tuesday for municipal elections after a court last week rejected a request to delay them until early next year to allow more time for COVID-19 vaccinations. The new date, a delay of just 4 days, was the latest permitted by the court. The Independent Electoral Commission had sought a delay of several months, saying it would be hard to organize a fair vote with the pandemic raging. Nkosazana Dlamini Zuma, Minister of Cooperative Governance and Traditional Affairs, told a virtual briefing that the new date had been chosen in coordination with the IEC to allow the maximum possible time to prepare. Following the court's judgment, the Commission also reopened the registration process for candidates, a boost for the governing African National Congress, which failed to register the candidates on time in dozens of municipalities. In the last municipal vote in 2016, the ANC suffered its worst result since the end of apartheid, losing cities such as Johannesburg to opposition parties.
In our next story, Cameroon sentences 4 men to death for shooting attack on school. A court in Cameroon has sentenced 4 people to death for their roles in a shooting attack on a school last year that killed 7 children and wounded 12 others, according to a court document seen by Reuters on Wednesday. The men were sentenced to execution by firing squad in the town square, but their sentences are likely to be converted to life imprisonment. Cameroon has not executed any of the hundreds of prisoners sentenced to death since 1997. The court document did not say on what basis it had found the men guilty of secession. No group has claimed responsibility for the attack, which drew condemnation in Cameroon and abroad. Lawyers for the 4 men sentenced were not immediately available for comment. 4 other defendants were sentenced to 5 months in jail for failing to report the crime. 4 others were acquitted.
Somalia feud threatens to unleash renewed turmoil. Somalia is no stranger to instability, but the country now faces the risk of renewed violence because of an increasingly bitter standoff between its president and prime minister. A Swedish-trained civil engineer, Robel, was plucked out of political obscurity by the president, better known as Farmajo, who appointed him premierly last September. The technocrat generally took the back seat to the politically savvy Farmajo, who worked in the foreign ministry and served as premier himself before becoming the president. After the head of state extended his mandate in April without holding elections, triggering the country's worst bout of political violence in years, he turned to Robel to help diffuse the situation by asking him to organize the parliamentary poll. As Robel's profile rose, he began to challenge Farmajo on several issues, angering the president. Many fear the spat will throw an already fragile electoral process into deeper peril.
Madagascar faces one of the world's first climate change famines as the African island nation experiences a food security crisis driven by global warming. Researchers say it is an alarm bell for the world. Food experts said there is no single factor behind the crisis, but the worsening droughts linked to climate change alongside a fragile food system and the economic impacts of COVID-19 have all played a role. The Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change in the flagship UN Science Report said last month Madagascar has experienced increased aridity and that human-induced climate change is the main driver of Africa's rising surface temperature. Madagascar is facing one of its first climate-driven food security crises, said Laura Pereira, an associate professor at the Global Change Institute, a research platform at the University of Witwatersrand in Johannesburg. Climate change was also found to be a key driver in the 2007 Lesotho food crisis. Cyclones and flash floods, once rare in this region, have become a regular occurrence as climate change warms oceans and causes stronger storms. Other countries are likely to experience climate-fueled food insecurity because Madagascar is not the only one facing a severe drought, according to climate experts.
Outbreak as meningitis kills 120 in DR Congo. An outbreak of meningitis has been declared in the northeastern region of the Democratic Republic of Congo. So far, more than 120 people have died from the disease. The outbreak has been difficult to contain because of the community's belief that it is linked to witchcraft, the World Health Organization has told the BBC. Samples shipped to France for screening found out that the bacterium responsible for this outbreak had the potential to cause large epidemics. Many have died, and the community's unresponsive nature is partly to blame for the high mortality rate being reported. Instead of seeking treatment, some people moved from one place to another, hoping that the disease will not follow them. The DR Congo government and the World Health Organization have now deployed a team to the northeastern province of Chopo to contain the situation. The province is part of the African meningitis belt that runs across the continent from Senegal to Ethiopia, covering 26 countries.
INCB, UNODC, and WHO joint statement on access to controlled medicines in emergencies. Access to controlled medicines in humanitarian emergencies remains constrained. There is an increase in demand for controlled medicines in emergency responses. Since the beginning of the COVID-19 pandemic, WHO has identified over 20 medicines with global level shortages, including 4 that contain controlled substances that are used in intensive care units for treatment of severe cases of COVID-19. Shortages impact countries of all income levels. Low and middle income countries are often disproportionately impacted by shortages, partly related to their relative purchasing power in international medicines markets and partly because specialized systems to manage controlled medicines do not always accommodate sufficient exceptions for emergencies.
South Africa's first black free dive instructor turns tide on apartheid history. Zandile Dlovo Black Mermaid Foundation aims to introduce the ocean to the country's black youth, millions of whom live in impoverished Shanty Township, where beach trips are a luxury and swimming skills in short supply. Sitting around Dlovo, 33 South Africans' first black and black female free dive instructors. The children learn how to bite down on the snorkel mouthpiece when breathing face down in the water, among other skills. Established in 2020, the foundation currently pays for the lessons but is looking for funders to ensure its longevity. The water space has not always been diverse, and I wanted to create a space where diverse representation in the ocean is possible, she said. Ndlovu gave up her own consultancy business, which she ran for 5 years after being employed in the corporate service sector. My joy is the moment when one of the kids say, "Oh, look, it's a fish. Oh, look, it's a starfish," because it means they have transcended the fear to actually look beneath the surface, and Ndlovu said.
Oh, beautiful. We love to see it. In the last of our top stories, the Kenyans who are helping the world to Cheat. Kennedy used to work as a teacher, but for the past 5 years, he's made his living in a very different way. I do academic writing, he says. He's part of a truly global online industry which is booming in Kenya. But what Kennedy and many other Kenyans call academic writing, the rest of the world calls cheating. If you're a student or a school pupil who is struggling with an assignment, or you just can't be bothered, then Kennedy and his team of writers will do it for you for the right fee. Researchers who study the business of what's being termed contract cheating say Kenya is a key hub. The reasons are simple. Kenya is an English-speaking country with a good education system where there are often poor economic opportunities, particularly for young people. For those struggling to get by, there is money to be made regurgitating knowledge for foreigners who they will never meet. And for Kennedy, joining this industry was a no-brainer. How much I used to earn as a teacher, it was so little compared to what I earn right now, he says. Okay, interesting.
I must get in touch with Kennedy for some work.
This is Still Africa. Good morning. We'll see you after the break. After declining steadily since 2015, current account balances, the sum of absolute deficits and surpluses, increased in 2020, not just in Africa, but globally. It is set to widen further in 2021 amid diverging economic prospects across countries. Experts from the International Monetary Fund discuss the issue. Have a look.
In 2020, this line spiked. It isn't a measure of inflation, housing prices, or interest rates, but it is something that economists find just as interesting, and maybe a little concerning. It's something called global current account balances, and they're widening as a result of the pandemic.
The current account is a record of a country's transactions with the rest of the world. So it's exports minus imports of all goods and services, plus net income like interest and dividends, and transfers like foreign aid.
So when a country is running a current account surplus, it means basically that it's selling more to the rest of the world than it is buying from the rest of the world. And the opposite is true when it's running a current account deficit.
Why do people worry about current account deficits and surpluses? They don't have to be a problem, they can be healthy. Young, poor country that's growing quickly might need to spend more today than it has in income to invest in its future.
On the other hand, for a country which has an aging population and need to save for retirement, it might be normal to be running a current account surplus.
But sometimes current account deficits and surpluses can become too big, with some countries borrowing too much and others saving too much.
Those imbalances become excessive, they can create problems, either because they fuel trade tension or because countries which are running, for example, an excessive current account deficit might run into a sudden stop. That's when international lenders become nervous about the deficit of those countries and they stop lending to them.
Global current account balances had been on the decline for years, but the trend changed with the pandemic.
That reflects the impact of the crisis on various sectors. Like travel virtually stopped overnight, and that means that there was a big fall in the earnings of countries that are tourism destinations like Thailand or Turkey or in the Caribbean, and then that meant a lot less buying by countries like China on tourism, which made their surpluses go up.
Countries which are oil exporters, like Saudi Arabia and Russia, in the early stage of the crisis, when the demand for oil collapsed, they saw a deterioration of their current account. On the other end, countries which export medical and safety goods, like China and Malaysia, benefited from the increase in trade in those kind of goods, and they also benefited from the shift from consuming services to consuming imported goods.
All of this has added up to a swelling of current account balances around the world.
How have government policies contributed to the widening?
We've had an unprecedented increase in government support, much more government spending, and that has an impact on the current account balance.
Virtually every country in the world has provided fiscal stimulus, but the final impact on the current account is really a function of how much stimulus was provided compared to trading partners.
We expect that over the next few years, as the pandemic fades and governments withdraw the support, so the impact on global current account balances will also fade. If, on the other hand, governments in current account deficit countries extend even more support than we currently expect,
or current account surplus country actually withdraw the support faster than what we currently expect.
that could slow down the path of returning to the declining trend.
Finally, we have also looked at a scenario in which countries provide a synchronized investment or health spending push, meaning that they all together provide spending in this kind of high-quality items to fight the pandemic and to support the recovery, of course within the limit of their budgets. And in this case, this can really have a large positive effect on global growth without increasing global balances.
When the world has safe and effective COVID-19 vaccines, how can we make sure they reach the people that need them most? Today, there are many vaccines in development. Most will fail. For those that could succeed, governments are under pressure to secure supplies for their populations. If governments compete for vaccines, most countries could miss out. This is not only bad for countries that cannot secure their own supplies, it's bad for us all, as no one is safe until everyone is safe. The COVAX pillar aims to ensure that every country gets fair and equitable access to eventual COVID-19 vaccines. It does this by acting as an insurance policy, with the largest portfolio of vaccine candidates in the world. Wealthier countries have a greater chance of gaining access to successful vaccines. And by pooling their buying power rather than competing against one another, they enable investment in factories. So more doses are available as soon as a vaccine becomes available. The COVAX pillar is founded on the principle of equitable access. This means any country, regardless of their ability to pay, has the same access to vaccines. By supporting the development and manufacturing of these vaccines, wealthy countries increase their chances of getting COVID-19 vaccines and ensure the rest of the world gets access too. Ending the pandemic as quickly as possible will take a global effort. We need as many doses as possible, as fast as possible, as soon as a safe and effective vaccine becomes available. 2 billion doses would be enough to vaccinate healthcare workers and other high-risk groups. If we start now, we can save hundreds of thousands of lives, not to mention trillions of dollars. It's not about one country versus another. It's about one world protected.
Happy Friday, and thank you very much for joining us on Africa Good Morning. Now, Okhone Tlage, who is a Namibian Sun journalist, now joins us to talk about all the news making headlines from Namibia in the past week. Good morning, Okhone. How are you?
Good morning, how are you? And good morning to the viewers.
We are fantastic. Please take it away.
Okay, I'm going to start with the latest edition of the Namibian Sun, and there are two stories from that edition that I'm going to quickly focus on. One relates to the Public Service Union of Namibia, which is eating into the membership which is slowly gaining bargaining unit status in various public entities and town councils. The first was NBC, and now recently Namibian Sun reported that it's also made inroads with the Runtu Town Council, in which it has, or which it is on course to getting bargaining unit status. Now that would mean that it would get the mandate from the employees of that town council to speak on their behalf. The other story that I'd like to focus on that was also reported in the Namibian Sun relates to the Hobabas Town Council, in which 6 employees four employees that work for the town council are claiming that they're being purged because they are members of the SWAPO party, and that this started when it's that town council's former CEO was still alive, and that with the recent with the local authority elections that were held in 2020, where SWAPO sort of lost the management council and lost its majority on the council, sort of claim now that because of this, now that they're being they've been purged from serving on that council.
All right. Okhone, is that all you have for us? Any personal opinions?
Personal opinions is on the issue of the town council. Of course, one would understand that if your party is no longer in control, it could make it difficult for you to actively participate as an employee on a certain town council. And then other personal opinions is congratulations once again to Christine Bommer for doing well in the Diamond League.
Thank you once again, Okhone, for bringing us the news in Namibia.
Thank you.
All right, this is still Africa Good Morning. You know what's happening in Namibia. I like that paper name, Namibian Sun. They could have called it Namibian Rain. They could have called it Namibian Thunder, but Sun, because you get to look forward to good weather, and we are all looking forward to good weather with our fingers crossed. But the only thing we can do is check out the forecast up next.
Imagine if it was your daughter, your mother, your sister. Please, my brothers, let us stop the senseless killing of our women.
Abusing of alcohol is no excuse to women abuse.
As a champion man, I acknowledge the impact of women abuse and gender-based violence in Namibia.
We pledge not to stay silent for the pain of our Namibian women. We pledge to always take action against women abuse.
WWF and Mondi have worked in partnership for years to promote environmental stewardship in the packaging and paper sector. Watch this video to see the progress Mondi and WWF have made in the areas of sustainable forest management, responsible sourcing, water stewardship, and science-based targets for greenhouse gas emissions in countries like South Africa and Russia.
The challenges that the global environment faces at the moment are so interconnected, so urgent, and so critical that as an organisation, we can't address those alone. At WWF, we believe in collective action and collaboration to really drive forward positive change. And we need business, as well as other key stakeholders, to work with us to really address the growing challenge of nature loss. The partnership with Mondi is a great example of how we're working with the company to combine expertise and experience to find long-lasting and innovative solutions to address these challenges and also ensure equitable access to shared resources for people, business and nature.
The history of our partnership with WWF goes back more than 20 years and started in South Africa, where we worked together on identifying and restoring wetlands. We have continued our work with WWF and expanded the work over our global partnership and have enabled shared learning and collaboration across a much wider group of people within both WWF and Mondi.
The WWF Mondi partnership is one of our most long-standing and impactful partnerships. It's focusing on 3 key areas, which are deforestation, climate change, and water scarcity. And these are critical areas for WWF's work as a whole.
Our purpose is to be sustainable by design. At Mondi, sustainability is at the center of our strategy and intrinsic to the way we do business. It's fundamental to our long-term success. We're tackling the climate crisis proactively through our sustainable forest management, through our responsible sourcing, and by setting science-based targets for our greenhouse gas emissions, and we do that with the support of WWF's Climate Savers.
Forests provide vital nature services that underpin the global economy and are critical for lives of local people, communities, and humanity globally. This is why the WWF Mondi partnership has a strong focus on protecting forest landscapes. When managed responsibly and well, these forests provide key ecosystems that will give socio-economic benefits now and for future generations and to the planet as a whole.
Our partnership has focused on protecting areas that have high conservation value. For example, in Russia, we've identified the areas of the boreal forests that have not been impacted by humans. We call those intact forest landscapes and set the core of those areas aside for protection. We've also supported WWF's work in Bulgaria, where they've trained forest managers to identify old growth forest areas and set them aside for protection.
Water stewardship has been an important focus of the WWF Mondi partnership, leading the industry towards achieving Sustainable Development Goal 6 on water and sanitation.
Water is vital for our business. Our work on water stewardship in this partnership has allowed us to implement water stewardship principles across our operations. What that means is we've worked on putting in place good water management practices. We are working on reporting transparently on our performance, but importantly, the partnership with WWF has helped us to also work with others in our catchment areas, for example, agriculture or other industrial users, to secure the water resource for all.
Climate change is the biggest threat to our future. We need rapid and deep cuts to greenhouse gas emissions now. It's also essential that science-based targets become embedded in business practice to drive forward the change that is needed. It's great to see the work that Mondi is doing to date on reducing its emissions and really helping drive forward a more sustainable and progressive, healthier world.
We recognise that taking action on climate is one of the most important things that we need to do. We're really proud that as part of our partnership, WWF Climate Savers have supported us to set science-based targets which have been approved by the Science Based Targets Initiative. We also recognise that setting targets and reducing emissions in line with science is a really important part of taking action that will allow us to achieve the United Nations Sustainable Development Goal 13 on taking climate action. We truly believe that collaboration is critical to achieve the positive change at scale and reduce the pressure on the planet, on people and on livelihoods. And it's only through the dedicated commitment from the teams in WWF and in Mondi that have allowed us to achieve what we have as part of our global partnership. And we're really looking forward to continuing to work on the sustainability challenges ahead.
The success of the WWF Mondi partnership has really also been driven by the people working on it, both colleagues within WWF and also colleagues at Mondi. And it's been an amazing collaborative effort from staff across programme teams, our partnerships teams, our marketing teams and the equivalent within Mondi, working together to really make this partnership have an impact and drive forward the change that we're looking to achieve.
A fabric mask acts as a barrier to prevent the spread of the virus. It must be used correctly and always combined with other measures to protect yourself and everyone else. When wearing a fabric mask, clean your hands before putting it on. Inspect the mask and do not use it if it is damaged or dirty. Cover your mouth, nose and chin. Adjust the mask to your face, leaving no gaps on the sides. Avoid touching the mask while wearing it. Change your mask once it gets dirty or wet. To take off the mask, clean your hands first. Remove it by the straps behind the head or ears without touching the front of the mask. As you remove the mask, pull it away from your face. Clean your hands after taking off any mask. If you need to reuse a fabric mask, store it in a clean, resealable bag. Hold the mask at the elastic ends when removing it from the bag and make sure it is not dirty or wet before using it again. Wash fabric masks in soap or detergent, preferably with hot water, at least once a day. Make sure you have your own mask and do not share it with others. When wearing a mask, make sure you know how to put it on, use it, remove it, and discard it or wash it correctly. Remember that a mask alone cannot protect you. When wearing a mask, continue to adopt other measures to prevent the spread of the virus. Stay at least 1 meter away from others. Clean your hands frequently and thoroughly, and avoid touching your face and mask. Stay safe, and let's all prevent the spread of COVID-19.
Welcome back to Africa. Good morning. It's time for us to dive straight into your economic news stories. And in our first story, Sanlam profit rises at lower end of forecast as virus-related claims spike. South Africa's biggest insurer, Sanlam, reported a 3% rise in interim profits on Thursday at the lower end of its forecast range as claims for COVID-19 related deaths spiked compared to 2020. It reported headline earnings per share, the country's main profit measure, of 191.4 cents in 6 months to 30 June, compared to 185.8 cents a year earlier. The insurer benefited from factors including a recovery in equity markets and growth in new business as people looked to save money and take out life coverage during the pandemic, it added. The impact of a worse than expected third wave of infections in South Africa would mostly be felt in the second half of its financial year, it said. Sanlam has taken steps including increasing premium prices in response and would begin to take vaccination into account for pricing of some products later in the year.
Ghana August consumer price inflation at 9.7 year-on-year. Ghana's consumer price inflation was at 9.7 year-on-year in August compared to 9% in the previous month, the West African Nation Statistics Service said on Wednesday. August marked the fourth month in a row that the inflation has risen in Ghana, with food inflation the largest contributor to the country's overall inflation rate, raising the third straight month. Housing inflation surged past transportation to become the second largest contributor to Ghana's inflation rate. Transportation inflation, and now the third largest contributor, also rose last month. Food contributes more than half of the overall inflation, and combined with housing, more than 2/3, and further including transport, more than 4/5. Samuel Kobina Anin, head of the Statistics Office, told the news conference.
South Africa economic recovery quickens in Q2, but risks remain. South Africa's recovery from a coronavirus-induced contraction quickened in the second quarter as restrictions to contain the pandemic were eased. Gross domestic product expanded 1.2% in the 3 months through June from a revised 1% in the previous quarter, Statistics South Africa said Tuesday in the capital, Pretoria. The median estimate of 4 economists in a Bloomberg survey was for growth of 0.9%. The economy is likely to contract in the third quarter after deadly riots, looting and arson erupted in July and weighed on activity in the eastern KwaZulu-Natal province province and the commercial hub of Gauteng, the two biggest provinces by contribution to GDP. A cyber attack at the state-owned ports and rail operator also hobbled trade at key container terminals and led the company to declare its second force majeure in a month.
Cooking oil bench has the world's biggest canola reverse plugging. Stockpiles of canola in the world's biggest producer plugged as a drought in Canada combined with global surge in demand for cooking oil made from the seeds. Inventories of oilseed trembled by 49% to 1.8 million metric tons on the 31st of July, the lowest level since 2017. More restaurants are opening up even as the COVID-19 pandemic drags on, using up vegetable oil. China is also purchasing more of the seed, with exports rising about a third from the prior year. Prices of oilseed like soya beans and canola have been touching new highs in 2021, and falling reserves signal that could remain expensive. Groceries around the world have been getting pricier, and dwindling stockpiles offer little hope of relief from the food inflation.
Now, in the last of our economic news stories, aluminum notches fresh 13-year high on supply woes. Aluminum extended its stunning year-long rally to the highest since 2008 as supply concerns in China and Guinea tightened the market. A coup in the African country, which supplies almost a quarter of the world's bauxite, has fueled concerns about potential supply disruptions to the material key to aluminum production. That's even as Guinea's new leaders urged mining companies to keep operating and reassured them that their existing agreements with the state will be honored. Aluminum has almost doubled since its trough last year as businesses worldwide reopened from pandemic shutdowns and consumer demand and economic activity rebounded. Economists forecast further gains ahead as the industry braces for a potentially seismic shift into deepening deficits. You know, that's a sad thing to hear when you're talking about money.
Yeah.
Deepening deficits. You want to avoid that. And a good way to avoid that is making sure you check out the economic indicators. Up next. right, the weekend is upon us. We have a lot of sport events coming along. Yet another chance to restore my faith in my football team. But Ari is the only person who can break it down for all of us. Good morning, Ari. How are you?
Yes, very good morning, Ashwin. Nice to talk to you. Yes, Arsenal is playing. They're playing at home against Norwich City, so there's hope. So I think the law of averages is very much in favour of Arsenal. I think they will win. So I think it will be a good weekend for you. So hopefully that will happen. Let's start firstly with some good news for Southern Africa. There's a new star that was born at the Olympics in Tokyo, athletics star. That's Christina Bombo from Namibia. Brilliant performance last night again. She ran her personal best and a new world under 20 world record again, beating her own record. And she won in the Diamond League in Switzerland. That was in Zurich. And she won in 21.78. So well done for Christina Bomba. And she is really a star that will do well for Southern Africa in years to come, and for Namibia, of course. And to cricket news as well, Namibia also played there. It is the World T20 qualifying tournaments that's taking place at the moment in Botswana and Gaborone. The World T20 for ladies, the women's section, the women's teams are going to be in South Africa 2023 in February 2023. So a few games that was played yesterday. There's 3 games today as well. Namibia did well. They beat Uganda by 4 runs, a close game. And Namibia 105 for 4, in Uganda 107. And then Mozambique unfortunately struggled. They only made 17 runs against Rwanda. Rwanda won by 10 wickets. And then Botswana, also a big win for them against Eswatini. Botswana 224 for 2. And Eswatini 29 all out. So that's the Namibian team there. They're doing great in the qualifying at the moment. Namibia will play against Nigeria today, a big game for them. And other 2 games today will be Tanzania against Zimbabwe and Botswana that will play against Mozambique. So the T20 World Cup qualifying Africa section taking place in Gaborone in Botswana. On to the football news that Ashwin was talking about. It's Tottenham Hotspur still leading the way in the English Premier League at the moment. After 3 games, they've got a full house of 9 points, and they're playing away to Crystal Palace tomorrow. And the teams chasing Tottenham Hotspur at the moment on 7 points is Manchester United, Liverpool, and Chelsea. And some of the games of the weekend, like I mentioned, Arsenal, they at home against Norwich City. Manchester United will be at home against Newcastle, and Cristiano Ronaldo will probably be in action there. That's Arsenal in action, and they will, like I said, be at home at Norwich City. And then another big game tomorrow will be Leicester City. They will play Manchester City. Leicester City play Manchester City, a big game. And then Sunday it's Leeds that will host Liverpool. On to some tennis news, and it's the US Open that's taking place. The finals will be played this weekend. US Open, unfortunately, South African Lloyd Harris did very well in the men's section. He was in the quarterfinals, but he lost against Alexander Zverev. Alexander Zverev will now play against Novak Djokovic, and that is Alexander Zverev. He will play against the first seed, Novak Djokovic, in the semi-final. The other semi-final is Felix Auger-Aliassime from Canada. He will play against the second seed, Daniil Medvedev of Russia. But the big news at the US Open is actually in the women's section. Brilliant story coming from that. 2 very young upcoming tennis stars that's playing. That is Emma Raducanu. She's from Britain. New talent. She's through to the final. Brilliant performance last night. She beat Maria Sakkari of Greece by 6-1, 6-4. She's only 18 years old, and the first British finalist since Virginia Wade 44 years ago. Brilliant story for Emma Raducanu. She was number 336 in the world before Wimbledon, and now she's in the final of the US Open. And she will play against another teenager, and that is 19-year-old Leila Fernandez of Canada. She beat Arena Sabalenka, Belarus, the second seed, in 3 tight sets. So it is the 18-year-old against the 19-year-old, the women's final that's going to be played tomorrow. Great game that will be in the tennis final at the US Open. Quickly also, Formula One racing, for those that love that, on the Sunday afternoon. Again, 3 p.m. is the start. That is the Italian Grand Prix. That is at Monza. Classic, very fast Monza track. Rivalry between Lewis Hamilton and Max Verstappen continued. Tight race, just 3 points between the standings at the moment. Maybe also news from the Italian Grand Prix is that Kimi Räikkönen unfortunately had to withdraw the Alfa Romeo driver. He was tested positive for COVID-19, unfortunately. So the Italian Grand Prix, it will be full house again, great atmosphere. It's Ferrari's hometown. Ferrari not doing too great. It will be Mercedes and Red Bull challenging again for the first spot. And then just to finish off some rugby news, there's some rugby championship rugby that's taking place not tomorrow on Saturday like it normally is, but on Sunday. So it's rugby on Sunday. It is firstly the All Blacks that will play 9 a.m. against Argentina. And then at 12 p.m. it is South Africa that will play against Australia. Both games at the same stadium. It will be the Robina Stadium in the Gold Coast just south of Brisbane. And so a big game for South Africa, their first tour game overseas against Australia. And then also locally in Southern Africa, it is the Currie Cup final, always a big one on the calendar in South Africa. And it is the Bulls in Pretoria that's hosting at Loftus Versfeld the Sharks. And that will be on Saturday, that game, tomorrow afternoon. And the news there is that Johan Goosen is unfortunately late. So that's all the sports. Hope you have a great sporting weekend, and we talk on Monday about all the results. Bye-bye.
Certainly looking forward to some good news on Monday. This is still Africa Good Morning. Headlines after the break. Welcome back to Africa Good Morning. It's time for us to get into your headlines from today's top stories. Tigray forces killed 120 civilians in village in Amhara. West African regional bloc suspends Guinea after coup. Morocco's Islamists suffer big loss in election. COVID-19, unacceptable deals and delays hampering life-saving COVAX deliveries. Sanlam profit rises at lower end of forecast as virus-related claims spike. In cricket, the Africa qualifying games for the next T20 Women's World Cup in 2023 in South Africa started yesterday in a tournament being played in Gaborone, Botswana. Those have been our stories.
Well, that's it from us this week. We'll see you again on Monday, same time, same place. We do welcome your remarks regarding our show. You can email them to us. Our email is agm_2centsworth@nmh.com.na. Alternatively, we are on Facebook and Twitter. That's at Africa Good Morning. We also have a website. It's called One Up 2 for more content that you love to see. And on that note, it's all our love and all our light. Please get vaccinated, wear your mask, and do not forget we can all beat COVID-19 together.
That's right. And the Shona people say, Chikuru Kufema. The most important thing to do is breathe. See you Monday.